Can you hear me?
Yep, I got
Yep.
you. You can see the
Perfect.
screen. Good to go.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk about resonance, but with a particular focus on what I call play with purpose. That's me climbing up a wall. And my friend Sophia says that I am a pretty climber. She's always like, "You're very graceful when you're going up the wall." And when I'm bouldering, during this kind of workout, I hit a level of what I consider to be flow or resonance with my body, with the wall, with the task at hand to get up the wall. And I look at this phenomenon as dancing up the wall. When I'm bouldering, I am having fun. It's not a workout to me, it is purely joy, and it touches on something called authentic play. An authentic play has been described as a mindset in which the mere act of playing and playfulness gives more pleasure than any goal associated with it. And through authentic play, children learn and adults improve flexibility, adaptability, as well as trust, empathy, sociability, and intimacy. And I believe that those qualities are the foundational makeup of resonance. Another way of looking at this sense of authentic play is flow. And I am a big follower of Mihala, who is this Hungarian American psychologist who kind of fathered this idea of flow. And flow is the focus of the entire being in a harmonious rush of energy, lifts us out of anxiety and boredom, and focus us in a way that allows us to reach new levels of creation and to feel pretty much aligned in terms of who we are and what we're doing. So he developed this model of flow, and flow is what I'm going to equate to resonance. So I'm going to hear me use those words interchangeably. But in his model, he starts at like boredom. So if you have a task that isn't that hard and your skills are very high, you might often find yourself disengaged or understimulated. If the challenge is low and the skill is low, you might lack motivation or interest if it doesn't take too much to get done. If the challenge is high and your skill is low, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed or pressured or stressed. But when the challenge is high and the skill, your own personal skill is high, you can enter into this flow state, this harmonious resonance where focus and enjoyment take place. So what's the makeup of this? Similar to what I just described with play, you're seeing these same words, harmony, cooperation, alignment, and a little bit of faith and trust that goes along with this process. So you have to have a goal in order to reach this state of play. And play for itself could be that state of goal. Perhaps you make that goal resonance. Or working at Parks and People, the goal currently right now is wonder. But you have to have this goal. And once you're focused on this goal, it'll be easier to connect with this authentic state of flow. Another way that I look at resonance is deep listening. And then looking at that on both a personal side, but also a collective side. So, what happens when we work together to hit resonance? First, understanding your natural frequencies, but then also um, what are my needs of the self, but then what are also the needs of the community? What are the needs of the client? What are their desires? So, obviously, what you do next, connect with others who care enough to take action, take a step, because resonance to me always deals with motion. There is a pause, there is a flow, there is a moment of rest, but always comes with getting back into motion. When you're moving in alignment with yourself and with others, then you can build communities that value empathy, dialogue, and this shared rhythm. So, how does this process get started? And this process that I'm going to show you is a process that I've built when I'm working with clients, but it's also a personal ideology about moving into a state of flow, a state of resonance. So Mihala says that the first step is to become aware of the real state of affairs. Is anyone using your energy without adequate return? And most of the time when I was getting into this process, I was the person using my own energy without adequate return. I was burning myself out, and I was coming to a place where I felt a disconnect from my state of flow. I know what it feels like when I'm playing, when I'm climbing that wall, when I'm dancing up the wall, and when I know when it doesn't feel right. So this first step is this moment of awareness. Then comes insight. It's a little pause. It's like, okay, where do I want to go? And when, let's take a look back at our history, our past, let's take a look into our future, and let's gain some insight on what's not working and what is working. After you do that, you explore some alternatives. This is kind of where the design process comes in as well. So you can look at this as also the steps of the design process. So you're looking at exploring and reflecting, you're doing multiple versions, you're looking back and playing around, and you're on a positive feedback loop between gaining those insights and then exploring and reflecting, and eventually hitting this step where you understand your path forward. This is where elevation comes in, going to the next step, reaching that next frequency. And then eventually you hit a moment of guidance where you can then lead others to um, this same state of flow. But the true magic is what happens after you reach that moment of guidance, after you recognize that you've been paused for a while and you're ready to get back in it. I believe this is a special catalytic moment of growth through dissonance. I grew up in the church, and we always talk about glory to glory to glory to glory. And this is this moment of continuously come to a pause, a rest, a reflection, and then getting back to it. And did you know that when you get back to it, when you've charted this process, this is where storytellers are born. This is where people can look back and they can say, this is where I was, this is where I'm at now, here's the process. And when you're telling these stories, other people can synchronize. Brain activity synchronizes. And you can clearly, there's research that shows that when you are moving in accordance with your understanding, other people can also pick up on that. And together you can form this community of resonance. I call this finding your natural frequency. This is what needs to happen first. Is first you have to look at yourself before you can look at the community. And I find that this process happens for me within mindfulness and stillness, but then also within movement and design. I'm just going to pause right here because I love this. So I grew up playing in the woods. I grew up in PG County, Southern Maryland, and right behind our house was this expanse of woods and creek. And every single day that I was there, out in the woods playing, I could play all day. I loved it. There was peace there. There was joy. There was so many things to look at, so many different natural frequencies to attune with. And so I believe that anytime that I'm trying to find my center, I go back to nature. I connect with myself there. I take a moment of stillness, and then I take what I've learned from there and I move on to design, to capturing and observing and taking these little moments. So I have a background in photography, and I did a series of looking at nature, looking at these moments that I consider alignment and resonance with the natural world around me, taking these snapshots and capturing them. And I went and did the photo series, but I also did photography. I love looking at architecture. There's a certain resonance there, this alignment of shape and form and function. And then this also brings me to design. After photography, I got into design, and I'm nowhere near not doing a 365 project, but I did a week project. And during this week, I decided you can use whatever you want, you can use there are no rules. Design for 7 days straight. And this was very, very difficult for me because when there are no rules, then all these possibilities exist. There's so many different ways to go about a project, but I like to use this moment to come back to myself, connect to my own natural tendencies. How do I design when I am giving all the tools and no prompt? And so I looked at one, my relationship to different things that I loved, anime being one of those, Full Metal Alchemist being one of those. And then I also looked at, I love me a basic shape. I love me a circle, a square, a rectangle. I love simple design. And so over this course of a week, 7 days, I built up the Seven Deadly Sins series. And this design brings me to my next stage of resonance, which is collective resonance. So as I begin to grow in design, I met Anna. And Anna owned this very small boutique called Something Else Boutique. And she was at a moment where COVID was occurring. She realized that she had no digital presence. She realized that she was at the same moment of awareness where resonance can truly start. She decided that I want to do something different. I want to redesign myself. And I was part of that process. So we built her new website. We expanded her branding, but we weren't just looking at the design, we were also looking at the internal processes using the same formula that I showed before of observing and then empathizing and designing. We also built internal processes to help streamline creation for her, take these different photos. It was literally me and some friends at a house party. She would give us a big bag of merch. I would send her a survey. She would plan out the different outfits. She would put three adjectives. I had her put three adjectives inside the survey to describe what the vibe was. And we would sit at these different house parties. Photographers, designers would all come together and we would just curate these collections of um, outfits. There's also a photo of my mom and my sisters there trying on the different clothes, and it became this collective response of everyone moving in accordance with her vision of showcasing these clothes and these styles. And then I met Hazel and Rachel and Maggie. So Hazel and Rachel were the clients, and Maggie was my brand identity designer. So I was leading creative direction. Hazel and Rachel had this brand called Drio, and they were at that moment where they also said, this is not what I want. This is not me anymore. This is a moment of awareness where this logo doesn't represent who we truly are. And so with Drio was one of the first times I used this process, but I wanted it to be tangible. I wanted them to be able to type in their responses to the questions about, okay, where are you and where do you want to go? We all heard of the brand questionnaire. My brand questionnaire was a little bit different. I had very weird questions in it because these questions helped me touch deeper frequencies within them and get richer answers. So, for example, one of those questions was, if your brand was a candle, what would it smell like? And everybody who I asked this question, they always stopped because it was out of pocket and they were like, what would my brand smell like? But the responses opened up conversation, allowing me to better connect myself with their frequencies. And we built them a new brand, a new uh, brand identity, a new website. And we did this multiple times. So this is Chris. And Chris was the client, Keith was the designer, and we worked together on the Gwyn's Fall Community Association website, went through the same process of trying to align where they were with their desires and their future goals, that exploration, that reflection. And we built them the Gwyn's Falls community website, custom icons, custom designs that resonated with their community, gathering their feedback, and then working with a designer all of us on the same wavelength in order to create their vision. We did this with Darius. Darius, I was the single designer on him, but he had this design as a landscape design studio. We decided he wanted something masculine and geometric, and we called it Midnight Modular. Sliding components, very simple, but something that spoke to him and resonated with him. And that brings me to another section of resonance. Getting back to a 9 to 5. So after I was doing freelance for years, I loved it. I still do freelance on the side. But I got the opportunity to connect back to nature, get back to my natural frequency again, touch that pure joy I get when being outside, touch back with photography, design, nature. It just felt like a perfect harmony to me. And that brought me to Parks and People. Parks and People, we built their website. But again, I wasn't just building their website and their design. I was also internally making sure that communication was flowing, that there was a dialogue happening so that I could make sure that I was connected to the multiple frequencies and harmonies occurring across departments, making sure that the information about all the parks, Parks and People has about 52 park projects. We're all across the city. What does it look like when I have all the information so that I can make sure that I are my team members, the interns that are working underneath me, can hit this moment of pure play and flow. They have all the information needed in order to continuously hit this state of resonance. After we align internally, then we release externally. So we have blogs, social media, posters, flyers, designs, all with a unified design and with messaging that resonates, as we see in this Black Butterfly post, which was one of my top performing posts in my career so far, giving us 45,000 views. And there's one more thing that happens when I was playing with resonance, playing with design, playing with a connection, and that was writing. Writing, I think, to me, has been the holiest moment of resonance that I have felt so far in my life. There is a desire, a pause, a stillness, and a desire to open up and release that sense of spirituality, that sense of faith, connect with the natural frequencies, connect with my own journey. And I begin to write, and I don't really edit that much. I didn't have a background in writing. I just open my mouth and let whatever it is come out. And I was published in 2023 in Reverie Literary Magazine. And that was the first time that I was like, did I just write fire? I think I wrote fire. And I submitted it and I was like, perhaps other people might resonate with this. I took a chance. This was one of the first times that I submitted my work. This was their inaugural issue. They hit me back up and they were like, no, you hit it. You hit that fire experience. And that brings me to where I'm at now. So when I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with alopecia. And alopecia makes you lose your hair. And it changed how I perceived myself. It changed how I grew up in elementary school, middle school, high school, and college, making friends, loving myself, dealing with shame and appearance. And I often felt that I wasn't fully aligned in who I was and how I wanted to move in this world. I did not feel a sense of resonance. I felt this sense of dissonance with my own self. And so, using that same practice that I take clients through, this moment of pausing, this moment of reflecting and saying, okay, what does it feel like when I am connected to my values, when I am confident in myself, and what is it like when I use my talents and my skills? What happens when I just open the door and allow this frequency to flow? Don't push myself down, and I begin to write. This was around COVID. Um, I had nothing to do, nowhere to go. I was getting into somatic movement and dance, similar to me climbing up the wall. I was in my apartment, stretching, moving, writing, and this outpouring of connectivity with me and what I will consider the divine continuously happened over a short amount of time. Once I began to collect these different pieces, I put together an anthology. I shared it with some friends, and they also were like, no, this connects with me as well. And we started to move into this collective resonance. So I started to work with a designer, Lauren Schooley. She began to illustrate these different scenes. And the overall premise is that the main character is at one of those moments, one of those periods of reflection where they too are saying, wait a second, what should it feel like to really hit resonance? Because a lot of people can confuse resonance and repetition as the same thing, but resonance has an elevation to it. It has a state of being, that frequency that moves like music. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause for a little bit, and I'm going to speak one of the poems. And so this poem kind of like poured out of me, and my hope is that you can hear. I hope the audio is like doing its thing and you can hear me clearly. I hope. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this chapter the way that it was, the way that it came out of me, and my hope is that it also resonates with you. And this is just one of those chapters. Again, I don't really edit. It just poured out of me, and these are long little chapters. But you will be able to hear what I believe happens when resonance is occurred within that individual, using my talents with writing, but also the frequency of my own natural voice, ideally to harmonize with something inside of you and hopefully stroke resonance. So at this point in the story, the main character decides to, they wish to be reborn out of love. And they decide to jump off this high height, burn up into flames, break apart, and observe themselves so that they can come together as a version of themselves that they truly love. And this is chapter 9. To become self sufficient, I burned a couple bridges. I was in the middle of raging rapids when the bridge caught aflame, set ablaze for my self immolation. Teach me how to swim before I take the plunge under crashing waves, intent on extinguishing my brighter days. But this heat evaporates, and I am thrown against the rocks, bruising internal organs, staining my skin vivid colors, and these waters won't wash them away. It took some time for my body to break, for my bones to shatter like falling grace, like stones thrown through windows, crumbling steeples, and rays of billowing gold over lush meadows. I thought I'd never breathe again, dragging my body out of the lake with faith, and my nails bent against the mountainside, snapping off until my fingertips are raw, and I heave my mangled body onto the shoreline, gripping the walls of tomorrow, barely alive. I lay down beside my dreams. They seep into my pores, rain on garden leaves, ushering in understanding and all that's left in me. A spark for the day, keeping the heat on like a lantern to usher in new seasons, the steam from my lungs barely managing to open up like the bellows lifting me off the floor. Gentle notes reconstruct my soul out of hope. Whispers from my throat crawl out from underneath my old skin like shedding petals. I enter a new season of hibernation where bones are remade stronger from covalent bonds and pollination from the dust of inspired atoms. Down for too long, whole seasons at a time. My skin decomposes. I grow roots from out of my spine, pushing up through twisted thoughts, dancing on timelines. Every match that burns a bridge lit, I douse in living, still crawling out of my prison. Thank you. So, to recap, harmony, play, enjoyment. Often people do not consider options. They do not pause to reflect on alternatives. They simply take the script provided. And like I said before, repetition doesn't necessarily mean resonance. There is a growth that comes with resonance. There is a connection to a higher state of being. How do you get there? If you don't remember the 5 steps, I broke it down into 3. Observe, stop for a moment, pause. Where are you? Where do you want to go? Empathize with that journey. How easy could it be? How could it be if we designed it perfectly for you or your community? And lastly, design. Play with purpose. I'll leave you with a quote that I did not write. This is from my favorite book. And it's something of a rally cry for me. And that is, aren't we all extraordinarily frail and in the end remarkably unimpressive creatures, too often of boring repetition and habit rather than bold imagination? Who will rescue us if not ourselves? Who will emancipate us if not ourselves? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you could hear the claps.
I did not know how the how the audio was. Sorry if it cut out.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm. It was all good.
Oh,
Crisp. It was
awesome.
crisp.
Mhm.
Yeah, man. Amazing.
Beautiful. Well, I'm opening it up to questions, comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad.
I can get us started. First off, just thank you so much for coming out here and doing this with us. Being the first of this series as well. Thank you, Natalia, for putting this together. We've had some pre-sessions with Gabriel kind of saying that, this is an open-ended session that we really wanted to just kind of open the floor to what it meant to you. And I really appreciate how you took the prompt and, really just invited us into your um, journey, into the perspective you've taken along the way. We got to find a synonym for resonate because we're going to all say it a lot of times in a lot of different instances. But there are a lot of parts of your story that I resonated with in particular. I'll start there, then I do have a question. Then like the moment of pause, I think is something that is like that's like really near and dear and true to the creative process, to myself in particular. My son, his name is Selah, which is meant as a moment to pause and reflection, and it's actually Hebrew for when God invites you to pause. And that's just that it is something that has always been a key to like stop what you're doing. And I think what you said a second ago about like repetition is not resonance. It stood out because it is easy to go through the motions and to kind of get into autopilot and just do the thing. But if you're not stopping to consider yourself first and then everything else from there, I mean, that's when the joy gets removed from it. So I really appreciate that. My, I'll ask one question, then I'll let folks go around and get to the rest of my first question, though. You mentioned early in the process that I think your goal, I believe, is how you put it for Parks and People, is wonder right now. I would love to hear a little bit more about that, and I guess specifically how you hope your clients or constituents how do you get there? I think that's where we're at in our process is we've aligned on resonance as our goal, and we're trying to develop our like how do we make this into a process that makes sense. And I think that's what you walked us through your version of that. I'm curious how you get your clients to wonder.
Yeah. This is an ongoing conversation at Parks and People. So we just had Dr. Sherry Parks. She is our board chair. She has a degree in ordinary aesthetics. And she talks about how beauty and this idea of awe and wonder creates positive influences both in the brain, but also ordinances in the city that have charted effects. So, for example, if you put planters in high crime areas, there has been research that shows that crime drops. The more that you add beauty to certain areas, the more that people feel better. So something that we were doing is internally trying to codify what wonder looks like in terms of the creation of our projects. So for example, in our park projects, we all went around and we said what wonder was. We talked about wonder being sensation, being this expansiveness, and this moment that brings you, into yourself as well. And we were like, okay, how do we do this in our park projects? How do we simulate wonder if we had, the goal? So for a park project, it might be uh, changes in elevation. Could a kid jump from these different elevations and get this sense of change of elevation? Could they see different colors? Could they see different textures? And could we just, change the landscape to make it more beautiful? So one of the things that we are trying to do is define wonder and the importance of wonder because I had a photo of my mom when I was in Greensboro. I grew up in North Carolina, and she was looking behind this wall, and this wall was covered in ivy. And she had this look on her face of just like curiosity and excitement. What's behind this wall? And so I love that photo. And I think that photo, just opposed to a lot of places in Baltimore where you turn the corner and you're not met with green, you're not met with wonder, you're not met with beauty, you're met with concrete. You're met with harmful practices that have been happening for years. And we're asking people what happens if you think differently. So one of the very first things we're doing is getting stories of wonder, of ideas from other people. Where have you experienced wonder? And we're going to start sharing those to show that this phenomenon of wonder isn't it's we can all experience it, and we've all have experienced it to some degree. And with wonder comes curiosity, learning, and things like that. So we're focused on looking at the research, looking at the personal experiences, and then connecting that in a full circle to our parks and our programming.
Appreciate that. Sounds very interesting. Anybody else from the question train before I get to number two? All right, I'm just gonna keep going then. My team knows I can't stand more than 3 seconds of silence, so I'm gonna fill it. Have to. Sorry. Um, what is the best and the weirdest response you've got to what does your brand smell like as a candle?
Mm. Um, so I would say the weirdest, okay, weirdest and best is very, very difficult to answer because best in some ways is when someone says an answer that like I completely understand. They're like, I smell it smells like grandma's cookies. Like my house smells like chocolate chip cookies, and you're like, oh, of course I know what this vibe is. I know how to give this information to a designer, and I'm like, make this design smell like grandma's cookies. And they're like, got it. Warm, cozy, these colors. But one of the weirdest was it was a fragrance that I had never smelled before. I had to like look it up and like look at the notes of it. And it was a cologne. And I had no idea what that smelled like. And I was like, that was so interesting that this person was like, this is it. My brand is this cologne. And I just thought that was like interesting and weird, but also really, really cool because something that I do is try to smell all of those scents that my clients will tell me about. I think smell and sense memory is a very, very effective way to get at some deeper, richer understandings of somebody else's frequency.
Absolutely. Love a client with some specificity also. What else?
We've also got comments in the chat. Wonder and awe as a pathway to collective resonance is beautiful.
Mm,
Brandon at the Hop, it said, thank you so much for sharing your story.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And I know I flashed it up on the screen very quickly at the end, but Gabriel D. Carter at Gabriel D. Carter Instagram, but also my Substack, so you can look at those different writings that I'll be posting as well. Um, and if you want photography and rock climbing um, and designed, that is my Instagram.
This was really dope. Thank you, Gabriel. This was really dope. Right. My it's not really a question. It's more like a comment maybe for the group altogether. Like just you're the one who was putting my brain. I think it's so interesting to hear another perspective of resonance and how your take on it was and just like the entire journey. I think the one that made me understand your take on it was more about the achievement of flow and how like achieving even operational flow and clarity had made more space to bring a level of output and be more present in areas. So it's more like kind of for like it just and my brain always is like an operational step. I need to see everything as steps to get there. I think a lot of us are like that actually, in our different lanes and mediums. So it's really just more of a comment of just like how I guess maybe I'll pose as a question of like how did you get alignment from others to reach this flow state, right? Because like your flow versus a client's flow versus a family's flow is all different. So almost having that respect or
Mhm.
boundary, but also like still making sure that like even though there's going to be bumps in the flow, that you're able to at least reach that ultimate like destination that like end up like unlocking everything for everyone together.
Yeah. I'll follow up with saying one, design is an iterative process. So first of all, I'm connecting to what is the goal? What's that mission? What's that vision? I'm a big like vision person. What is your vision? Like dream big. Where do you see the world
Mhm.
with you in it doing what you can do? And then the second thing is I'm very values based. Do our values connect?
Right.
Are we aligned in a way that truly resonates with me deeply? And if so, I'm just charting a potential path that I see towards your vision. And you can say that this does or does not work for you, and we can then take that and branch off and figure out some different ways. But one of the tools I really like to use, so I showed Airtable a lot in this presentation, but there's a tool called Milanote, and it unlocked some things for me. It
Mm.
was amazing. So it's a infinite whiteboard, but there's a very low barrier of entry to making a note, collecting a
Mm.
line, collecting another line, like mind mapping and seeing these pathways step by step. I'm a big fan of lists. So I can get hyper focused. My brain is very active. So if I'm looking at a design, and mostly, a lot of people when you're designing or working at a job, your actual job or the thing that you have to do that day actually is multiple steps. It's not just like done design. Like it is, okay, I need to do research. I need to look at this. Like, so I got in the habit of writing out those minute details on these giant lists and then connecting them in this giant web. And then at the time that I was freelance, I was like, this is a lot of work. I need to automate this. So then I looked up business tools to kind of automate that process for me. At the time, for example, I love business, I love growth, but I don't like the monotony of some of the admin tasks. So I automate it as much as possible so that I can get back to that flow state as quickly as possible.
You answered the question perfectly. You already know my word of the 2 weeks is gonna be automate, guys.
Mhm. Hot
Like
topic, right?
Gabe said, we gotta automate. Like if we want to hit residents, we gotta automate, guys.
Yeah. I
Appreciate
mean, I
that.
think I think the way you use this is important that like you automate what you can in order to give yourself the space to do the things that you can't automate, right? Because there's not always enough hours in the day to do all the things, especially from a creative like things where you need to like be focused on that, right? When I was my past life as a designer was all about all-nighters because like I just it's tough to turn it off and turn it back on and do this and do that and all the distraction and everything there. And so like all day would be the other stuff. And then at nighttime I'm like deep into Netflix past of like all the old random foreign shows and all the things. So yeah, the ability now to be able to automate some of those things that are just time consuming is really important in our industry in particular, I feel like. So
Mhm. Something else I'll say is leadership's ability to frame the experience and the question in multiple ways, like their ability to restate the same thing in a different way is very helpful to the clients. So one of the ways in which when I'm working in the creative director mode and I'm paired with designers and videographers and helping other people see the vision is not just the words that the client gives us. It's this process where after they have given us the smell, we also look at like what does their brand wear? We look at what is their house, the brand as a house look like? How do they design? I love interior design. So I'm creating all these different frames of reference that I can give to designers and teammates so that you can be aligned on the vision because just because someone said a particular thing, like and this is important inside of the process when they're filling out this brand questionnaire, when they fill it out, they don't just fill it out and submit it. We pause at that question and I'm like, why did you choose that? Why grandma's cookies? What is it important to you about grandma's cookies? I might have a totally different experience with that. So using their words, but creating as many different frames of reference as I can in a quick way, whether it's interior design, branding, branding inspo and things like that, helps connect the entire group to that sense of residence, that shared understanding.
Rolling. I wanted to ask about how you just found your voice and how you, when the mediums you choose to demonstrate resonance. If this question came from releasing your beautiful comic in the illustration, just that was such an unexpected way to tackle those topics. And I just thought it was really beautiful and unexpected. So just how you define your voice and how you bring resonance to the world through your work.
Yeah, I we're not static beings. We're growing and changing. So I like to look at it as different iterations. Design was the most accessible at a time. So like I didn't get into paints and drawing and things like that. I'm not an illustrator, but I was able to use my words to give it to an illustrator, and then they were able to understand my vision. And inside of a Milanote board, I have the world of this universe that I'm writing in built out. I have concept art, I have little quotes and snippets and things like that. So that was one way that I did it. But finding words as well, word like writing is so accessible. Like I don't need to pay for, I can buy a pen. So looking at the different tools that I had in my repertoire in order to create was important. When I was very young, I had a piano and I love music. Love music. I wasn't able to curate a playlist for this, or I would. I might still share one with Nat and she can share it around. But music is a way that I truly resonate with the global world. But I used to play piano and I can't read sheet music. But I just like the way it sounds. I just like to be melodic and come up with these different flows. And that's me using a medium of channeling. So I just tried as many different things as I can, but usually it was the most accessible to me at that time in my life, whether that was like, okay, I didn't have access to a clay studio. I've never done clay. I've never, done that. But that'd be a cool medium. I've talked to people who are like, Gabe, this could be a play. And I'm like, let's do it. I love to see that medium happen. But the ones that you saw were the most accessible to me at that time.
I'd like to say I really find value and super interested in how there seems to be just a centering of humanity behind your entirety of the design philosophy and process for you, which is just as a non-designer, super interesting to hear. And I've noticed how the entire process really mirrors sort of life and living life and the idea of growth from dissonance. It's just this has been a super insightful and, again, interesting commentary to see just how many similarities there are between design practices and philosophies and just good, healthy life practices. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing that info. Just a big light bulb has been going off a million times this whole time.
That means a lot. I'm glad. I'm glad we resonated together. But truly, I think the what informs my designs is my human lived experience. All I can do is, I think it was Brad Pitt who said this or something. He's like, all I can do is go out and live my life, and that informs the work. Um, and that's truly how it is. Me looking at the design process is me looking at growth and maturity in my own life. I did another talk on spirituality and maturity as a method for design. This idea of like you can design your life the same way you can design a brochure.
That's so awesome.
Amazing. I know we're getting close to the hour. Anything else from anybody from the gallery?
Gabe, what is the future of Druid?
Yes. So Druid is actually a very small piece of a cinematic universe that I copyrighted. So this is an anthology set in that universe, and there are different pieces. So I'm also working on a novel set in that same universe. So Druid is going to be out for free. It's actually on my website right now. It's hidden, but if you gdcarter.com/druid, if I didn't password protect the page, which I'll check after this. But I'm starting to release it on my Substack and I'm starting to release it on my Instagram because it just needed to come out. It needed to get out of me, and the more people who I shared it with, the more they were like, "Where can I read this? Where can I experience this?" So it is the door to this entire universe I'm building, this universe of ash and sage, where grief and inspiration are tangible. So Druid is the first, yes. Druid is the first step. It might be password protected, but if you give me like 30 minutes after this, it'll be open again to the public. I've sent it around. I have some people who are trying to help me get it published. And then as I release it, I plan to crowd fundraise so that I can pay Lauren to keep doing amazing work. Her graphic design skills, which what's interesting is that I would not design it that way. Like I love how she is seeing Druid and she's able to translate it. I would use basic shapes. I would be like, oh, there's a circle and the squiggle line, and I'm actually intrigued by like how I would do this if I did it myself, but I know that it would burn me out in terms of time and energy and creation. So handing it off to someone and seeing their creation and being like, oh my God, that's a great way of depicting, this world is has been really cool. And I want to make sure that she continues to get paid for the amazing work that she does. So that's next. That's next.
Amazing, Gabe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Internet, for working. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for hearing me. It means a lot.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate you for joining us. We'll have you back sometime. Maybe do some work together at some point. But just thank you again for today, inspiring folks on this Friday afternoon. And yeah, I'm sure Natalia can probably reiterate some of the links where we can follow you and all the things like that, so we can keep up with your work in the series. let Lauren know that she's dope. I think everybody, when we saw that first scream, like, oh, that's yeah. So looking forward to seeing the universe come to life.
Some thanks for sharing this frequency with me. Appreciate that.
All
Anytime.
right, and we got the soundbite. Boom, there we go. Now the brand is complete.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think with that we'll go ahead and wrap. Appreciate all y'all for coming, taking the time, and hope everybody here has a good weekend.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
weekend.
you.
For
Bye,
sure. Happy
guys.
Friday.
Thank
Peace.
you.